Hi, I'm Isaac Stropes, and this is Truth Talk, presented by The Challenge, and today we're going to look at Ephesians 2:15. The goal of Truth Talk is to help establish the context of a verse, and to help clear up confusion about its meaning. We hope that you find this helpful. I'd like to start out this one specifically by saying a special thanks to my friend and co-laborer in the field of the Lord, to David Washam, who pointed out the Greek words in this verse. He helps me a lot in The Challenge. Ephesians 2:15 says, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is, the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace. At first glance it appears that this verse is saying that Yeshua, that's Jesus, did away with the Torah. Let's dig deeper and find out if that is the case. This verse starts out by saying that Yeshua abolished the law of commandments contained in ordinances. Most people read this and instantly associate the word law with the word Torah. But the key word in this particular verse is not the word law, it is the word ordinances. The word translated as ordinances is the Greek word dogma. It is the Strong's word G1378 and means doctrine, decree, ordinances, of a public decree of the Roman Senate of rulers, or number 2, the rules and requirements of the law of Moses, carrying a suggestion of severity and of the threatened judgment. And I would say specifically to the oral law, and number 3, of certain decrees of the apostles relative to right living. This word is used in the New Testament 5 times, including this verse. Because it is only used 5 times, we can easily use these verses to help determine the meaning of the word. The word dogma is used to describe the decrees of Caesar in Luke 2:1 and Acts 17:7, the decrees of the apostles in Acts 16:4, and the oral law in Ephesians 2:15 and Colossians 2:14. We know that the word in Ephesians in 2:15 is talking about the oral law because of the verses around it. Let's read them. Ephesians 2:11 through 16. Therefore, remember that you once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, made in the flesh by hands, that at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of separation, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is, the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, that he might reconcile them both to God in one body and through the cross, thereby putting to death the enmity. The first thing we need to establish is, who is Paul talking to? He gives us a pretty big hint. Notice that Paul says, you who were once far off. He says this in reference to the 10 tribes of Israel, that we were scattered in exile and have not yet returned. We can see reference to them in Isaiah 43:1, verses 5 and 6, Jeremiah 30:10 through 11, and Jeremiah 46:27 through 28, and many more verses. We know from Peter 1:1 and John 7:35 that the apostles knew where some of the dispersion of the 10 tribes were. But why would Paul write to them? It all goes back to a dispute between the 2 houses of Pharisees, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. The house of Hillel said that one day Ephraim, that is the 10 tribes, or Israel, could return and be made a part of the covenant, but the house of Shammai insisted that they could never return because they had become Gentiles. You see, the Israelites, the Jews that is, who came back from the exile, referred to the 10 tribes that were scattered as Gentiles. Paul was trained up under Gamaliel, Acts 22:3 says this, the leader of the house of Hillel. Because of this, Paul was taught that one day the house of Ephraim would return. When he came to believe in Messiah, he was able to see that Ephraim could return through the sacrifice of Messiah. Those who were made unclean would be made clean. Those who were cast off would be restored. And so it was easy for Paul to see that the Gentiles were included in the dispersion. Not only, though, the 10.5 tribes of Israel, but also those Gentiles who would choose to sojourn with Israel. Now that we have shown who Paul is talking to, it's important to take note of something he says. Paul states that Yeshua has broken down the middle wall of separation. Most people read this and don't realize that it's talking about worshiping in the temple. When the second temple was built, an outer court was added where Gentiles could come and worship. Dividing the court of the Gentiles, or the outer court, from the inner court was a 4-foot high wall. The Torah never spoke of such a wall, but it was the decision of the leaders of Israel to create it. This wall was designed to let the Gentiles see in and to keep them out. It served to keep those who were unclean from defiling the temple, but it has also served as a division between Gentile and Jew. The 10 tribes were then looked down on, and since they were considered Gentiles, not as holy as the Jews, this created an enmity between them. But this enmity was prophesied to be done away with by Messiah, see Isaiah 11:13, because they were going to be unified again one day, see Ezekiel 37:16. These 3 things show us that the context of Ephesians 2:15 is the oral law. My name is Isaac, and you've been listening to The Challenge. Thank you.